Welcome back, 412-575-2600 on the Bordas and Bordas hotline. Also taking your tweets at Josh Taylor HD. Of course, Josh Taylor in tonight for Rich Walsh. We got Zach on Twitter who asks, if this was a normal 162-game schedule for Major League Baseball, do you think the Pirates would be able to hit 50 wins? If you saw the offense you saw today and yesterday, they might win 70 just to get that offense. But the problem is we haven't seen that offense most of the season except until this weekend. Remember what I told you, first time with back-to-back wins in what, a month and a half? That offense isn't good enough if you haven't seen it up until this point. So I would be inclined to say no, because we haven't seen that offense consistently over this time period. Not to mention the fact that you imagine trying to put this entire pitching staff through a 162-game season. You already don't have Jamison Tyone. You already don't have Chris Archer. You lost Mitch Keller. How would this rotation be expected to survive? I mean, you'd have to start at Derek Holland. You'd have to start Stephen Brault. You might even have to start Chad Kuhl more consistently, but probably be on a limited pitch count, considering the fact that he's coming off Tommy John surgery. He just picked up his first victory in 2 calendar years. So this is a pitching staff that would not be able to hold up over 162 games. So there's a couple reasons right there why they wouldn't be able to do it. And you've heard me say this before, both on this platform and also on the radio on the Sunday morning grind. The way I look at it, to win games in baseball, you have to have 3 things: pitching, offense, and defense. And you need at least 2 of those things to win. And one of them has to be pitching. And that's the one thing they have not had consistently the entire time. So I would say no. Over 162-game schedule, it'd be hard for this team with its pitching currently constructed to win 50 games. Let's keep talking Pirates with Mike in Oakland. Mike, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, Josh. Hope you're staying safe. How you doing, my friend?
Appreciate you. I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. So 2 quick points, and I'll get your thoughts. First, I want to talk about Josh Bell.
Okay.
You know, I was never for signing this guy to a long-term contract, even though after, the first half of last year, everybody was raving about him, and rightfully so. He had a nice 6-7 weeks. But he's really not been very good since, and he really wasn't good the year before. He's been very streaky. He doesn't hit for average, and when he's on, but he's more times off than he is on. And this year he's hitting .205. His slugging percentage is less than .300. I mean, it's terrible. So I think the Pirates dodged the bullet with him having Boras as an agent, and I think Josh Bell's going to regret it. I don't think in a couple years when he's going to hit free agency, I don't think he's going to get any kind of long-term deal. And the second point is Neverauskas. Josh, please, why is this guy in the bullpen? Why is he on the roster? His ERA is 11 this season. It's a career of almost 8. This guy should not be in the major leagues. Thank you. I'll let you finish.
Those are 2 very, very good points. I'll address the first one. I'm talking about Josh Bell and not signing him to a long-term deal. I have a small theory behind that. They may have learned a lesson by not signing Josh Bell to a long-term deal. They might have learned that by looking at Gregory Polanco's deal. Remember a few years ago when they signed Gregory Polanco to that long-term deal? Was it 2016? It seemed like a great idea at the time, right? Does it seem like a great idea now? Probably not so much. And you look at what Josh Bell did last year in that MLB historic month, you'd think, yeah, sign to a long-term deal. It's a great move. I think you're right. Maybe they dodged the bullet by not doing that right away. And that's one of those things that teams look at. And now bear in mind, we've seen teams sign guys way earlier in the process before they've even done anything. We saw Tampa sign Evan Longoria when he was called up to Tampa. And they signed him to a long-term deal because they figured save some money now, get the peak production now, and then have him save it on down the road, trade him off and get some pieces for him. So we've seen that happen in the past. Now here's the thing. That's the risk you take as an organization because you lock up a guy for a certain period of time. But to your point, to see what Josh Bell did last spring and to see what he's done since then, it kind of speaks for itself. I think it's a good way to look at it. Let's go to Alex in Mount Lebanon. Alex, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hi, how are you doing tonight?
Good, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Who do you think the Steelers' best wide receiver will be this season?
Whew, that's a good question. The reason why it's a hard question for me to answer because so many of these guys are expected to have different roles. I'm expected for Ryan Switzer to take a bigger role as a slot receiver, assuming that he makes the team, because there's a lot of guys that got to get jobs this year. I'm assuming Chase Claypool is going to have a big job as far as trying to make plays downfield and in the red zone. I'm assuming that Deontay Johnson's going to have a very accelerated role of making plays on third down and trying to be a reliable possession guy. And the fact that all 3 of those guys I just mentioned are going to probably garner some attention from defenses, I'll go with Juju. Juju could have a bounce-back season, not just because He's gotten himself in shape and kind of rededicated his body, not just because of that, but because now there are other receivers on this receiving core that teams have to pay attention to. Now you can't ignore Deep because you got to pay attention to Chase Claypool. If Ryan Switzer can be even remotely reliable as a slot receiver, that makes Deontay Johnson's job easier. That makes Juju's job easier. It makes James Washington's job easier. That's a guy you got to worry about down the field. So if all these guys are chipping in and doing their part, maybe it makes Juju's job just a tad bit easier. Dave in Finleyville, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hi, Josh. Thanks for taking my call. Do you see the Penguins moving Matt Murray and making Tristan Jarry the starter for next season coming up? I'll hang up and listen to you.
It's on the table because they're going to have to figure out what they want to do. Do they want to move him or do you want to sign him? Because his contract time is going to be up soon, and you're going to have to figure out what you have here. And the fact that they went away from him during that playoff run probably tells you all you need to know is that their confidence might not be as strong in him right now, that their confidence might be stronger in Tristan Jarry right now. So that's something that does stick out. And if you're not going to sign Matt Murray to a long-term deal, you're better off trying to move him and get something in return. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of teams out there that can use a Stanley Cup winning goaltender who's done it 2 times and has the experience to go with it, and probably could use a change of scenery. Maybe if you move him to another place, maybe he's able to refocus and do some things over again. And I've had this long-standing theory for a while, and it pretty much applies in any sport. Don't underestimate another team's ability to think that they can fix a guy. That sticks out. Let's go to Kirk and Harmer. Kirk, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, what's up?
How you doing?
Good. Hey, listen, these last dozen or so, 15 years, these Pirates, they've been fielding a team consistently mixed with single-A, double-A, and triple-A ball players with 3 or 4 professional ball players that they ultimately trade away anyway at the end of whatever year that they trade them away at. They haven't posted or presented to the fans of Pittsburgh a professional baseball team in the last 15 years. That's just simply the way it is. I mean, you watch them play now. This is a joke. This is really a joke. So as far as the Steelers go, let Ben sling it 50 times a game. Line up, put Juju in a slot. Line up Washington and Johnson as the wides, and those 2 big tight ends. That one guy they just got from Notre Dame, and the other, and have either Connor or Benny in the backfield to block, and let Ben just sling it all day long. That's the way they're going to be successful. That's the only way they're going to win. That's it. They got no running game.
Kirk, I couldn't disagree with you more on that second point. Let's go look back at the numbers. When Ben throws a lot of passes in the game, odds are they're behind and they're probably not winning. That winning percentage is not good. This is also not counting the fact the last full season he played, he led the league in interceptions. You don't want to recreate that. You want to find a way to find balance with this offense. Can you use the pass to set up the run? Absolutely you can. And now you got a running back that by committee that might be able to do different things. James Conner doesn't have to do it all by himself. It doesn't have to just be Benny Snell. You got a couple other guys that can help this group out, and Ben doesn't have to do it. Remember, Ben's 37 years old. You're expecting a guy that's approaching 40 to throw the ball that many times in the season. The last time I saw that happen, that guy's name was Brett Favre, and that didn't end too well for the teams that he played on in New York and Minnesota. That's all I'm pointing out with that. I'd like to see them have more balance with this offense and use the pass to maybe set up the run. And my thing is this. If you have to have Ben Roethlisberger throw the ball that many times in a game, that means you're probably already falling behind and you're probably not in a good position to win football games. So I'm hoping it doesn't happen just because of what the numbers say what happens most often when that's the case. As far as the Pirates question, did you just get here after 2015? Because for about 3 years, they weren't too bad, and they probably had the second best baseball player in all of the league. He was definitely the best player not named Mike Trout and Andrew McCutchen. Perhaps you heard of him. Those 3 years, they were pretty good. The rest of it, yeah, you're probably on to something. In the meantime, did you see what Marc-Andre Fleury's agent posted on Twitter today? Let's talk about that. Tweet of the day, Tri-State Office Furniture. That's one way to be eliminated from the playoffs, but I don't think that's what the Vegas Golden Knights have in mind. I think Alan Walsh is trying to advocate for his client, but maybe that's too much of a graphic way to do it. That's a little weird. Let's take a break, and we'll talk about less weird stuff when we come back. Stick around.